Picture this: a perfect sunset painting the Bahamian sky in deep violets and molten gold. The warm salt air caresses your skin as you sit at the edge of paradise, sipping a drink with the person you call your soulmate. For Lynette Hooker, this wasn't just another vacation stop on their sailing journey. It was the kind of dream she and Brian had chased for years aboard their vessel. Soulmate, a floating home built on love, adventure, and second chances. But in the span of one evening, that dream didn't simply fade. It shattered. It disappeared into the black void of the Atlantic, leaving behind a trail of contradictions, unanswered questions, and a grieving family demanding the truth. We've all heard the official version: the tragic accident, the sudden fall overboard, the heartbroken husband fighting the elements. Yet when you look closer, when you follow every piece of data, every timestamp, every local account, something far more disturbing begins to emerge. This is the story of Lynette Hooker, a 55-year-old mother, sailor, and vibrant woman whose life ended in the waters off Elbow Key in the Abaco Islands on April 4, 2026. And right now, the evidence surrounding that night is raising more questions than answers. Questions that have turned sympathy into suspicion and forced investigators to treat this not just as a missing person case, but as something potentially far darker. Let's start at the beginning, with the moments captured forever in a single photograph. On that Saturday evening, a local fisherman named Joe was simply trying to capture a nice shot to send to his mother. At exactly 6:34 p.m., he snapped a photo of the pool area at the Abaco Inn. In the background, clearly visible, are Brian and Lynette Hooker. Lynette is wearing a black swimsuit with a distinctive green cover-up. That green cover-up would become an important detail later, one Brian apparently never mentioned in his initial statements to authorities. The sun at 6:34 p.m. in the Abacos during early April is still high and bright. It is broad daylight. Yet Brian later told investigators and others that they didn't leave the resort until around 7:30 p.m. or later, painting a picture of darkness closing in as they made their way back to their anchored sailboat in a small 8-foot hard-bottom dinghy. Surveillance footage from the inn reportedly shows the couple moving toward the dock area at approximately 6:38 p.m. That leaves roughly an hour of time that Brian has struggled to fully account for in public statements. In the unpredictable world of tides, currents, and fading light, 60 minutes can feel like an eternity. Why push the timeline later? Why create the impression of a dangerous nighttime journey when daylight was still very much on their side? The trip from the Abaco Inn dock to where Soulmate was anchored in Aunt Pat's Bay is short. Locals estimate 10 to 15 minutes under normal conditions. Yet Brian's account describes a nightmare that stretched far beyond that. He says the engine failed after Lynette fell overboard, taking the kill switch key with her. High winds, reported around 20 knots that evening, pushed them apart. He paddled desperately but couldn't reach her. The dinghy drifted for hours until he made land near Marsh Harbor around 4 a.m. the next morning. 9.5 hours. Think about that number. A short hop in a small, lightweight tender turns into an all-night ordeal. Locals who have navigated these exact channels for decades aren't convinced. They point to the geography: shallow flats, pilings, and areas where the water is often only 2 to 3 feet deep, even at high tide. In many spots, a man of Brian's height could have stood up and walked the dinghy to safety. Yet according to his story, they drifted helplessly across the waterway. This is where the data starts to scream. Physical reality, tides, depths, wind patterns, and distances doesn't easily align with a 9-hour uncontrolled drift in waters so familiar to experienced sailors like the Hookers. They had been living aboard Soulmate for years, documenting their adventures on their YouTube channel. They knew these waters. They knew their equipment. Now, let's go back earlier that day, to the bar at the Abaco Inn. One of the last people to interact significantly with Brian was a veteran bartender named Ken. With over 20 years in the trade, Ken has seen every kind of couple pass through paradise. He knows the difference between genuine relaxation and performance. Around 4:30 p.m., Brian approached the bar alone. Lynette walked past, heading toward the pool without stopping for a drink. Brian ordered Cuba Libras, rum and coke, 2 rounds, 4 drinks total. High sugar, high energy. Ken described Brian as social, calm, even apologetic later when he returned shirtless from the pool or ocean, saying he knew it was close to dinner time and shouldn't be wandering without a shirt. He complimented the service, made polite conversation. Nothing out of the ordinary. No raised voices. No visible tension. To Ken, it looked like just another relaxed tourist couple enjoying the islands. But after learning what happened hours later, that polished normalcy began to feel chilling. In true crime cases, the absence of drama can sometimes be the loudest red flag. When a partner vanishes under suspicious circumstances, the surviving spouse's behavior in the preceding hours is dissected for cracks. Here, the surface was smooth. Too smooth for some observers. Lynette herself was quieter that afternoon, almost invisible according to staff. She lingered by the pool while Brian handled the drinks. Was she unwinding after a day of sailing? Or was something heavier weighing on her? Tensions aboard Soulmate that had reached a breaking point far from home? After leaving the bar, the couple made their way to the dinghy. What happened next is known only through Brian's account. He says Lynette fell overboard in rough conditions. The key went with her, killing the engine. Currents separated them rapidly. He lost sight of her as she swam toward shore. He paddled for hours in the dark, fighting wind and exhaustion, eventually reaching land the next morning and reporting her missing. Search efforts launched immediately. Divers, drones, helicopters from the US Coast Guard. But as days turned into weeks, the operation shifted from rescue to recovery. Lynette has not been found. What has fueled public and official skepticism are the details that followed. Brian was arrested on April 8th and held for questioning. Authorities probed whether he caused harm resulting in death. He was released without charges on April 13th, but remains a person of interest as the investigation continues. He has consistently denied any wrongdoing, describing the night as a cascade of failures in unpredictable seas. He says his only focus is finding Lynette. Yet actions in the aftermath have raised eyebrows. While local volunteers and professionals risked everything searching the waters, Brian reportedly inquired about recovering the dinghy and securing assets. He eventually left the Bahamas, citing family reasons including his mother's health back in the United States. To Lynette's daughter, Carly Islesworth, this departure felt like abandonment. Carly flew to the Bahamas not for sun and sand, but for answers. Boarding Soulmate was an emotional freight train. Her mother's perfume still lingered in the humid air. Clothes neatly folded. Personal items untouched. Among them, Lynette's signature gold necklace with a diamond L pendant, a piece she wore every single day. Why remove and leave behind such a cherished item for a quick dinghy ride back to the yacht? Carly also found headbands her mother loved and a small hand-painted picture frame she herself had made as a gift. These weren't the belongings of a woman planning to disappear or expecting disaster on a routine trip. Everything suggested Lynette intended to return to the boat that night. Everything except Lynette herself. The daughter walked off that vessel wearing one of her mother's headbands, a heartbreaking attempt to hold onto a woman rapidly becoming a ghost in the eyes of the system. She stood on the dock where her mother took her final steps and looked out at the shallow flats. The shoreline visible, the water not deep enough in many places to swallow someone without a trace. His story has been total trash from the jump, she has said publicly, voicing what many locals and online investigators have echoed. Geography itself challenges parts of the narrative. The distance from the inn to the anchorage is a straight, relatively short shot. Even with engine failure, experienced mariners point out that paddling with the wind toward visible land, or using shallows to stand and maneuver, should not have taken 9 hours. The wind was strong, yes, but in the Abacos you are surrounded by options for safety. Why drift into deeper or more difficult water instead of hugging the flats? Then there is the decision to move Soulmate the next day. Standard maritime protocol when someone is lost at sea is to stay put. Keep lights on. Turn the vessel into a beacon. Moving the yacht removes the primary reference point a struggling swimmer would look for. Brian has explained his actions as practical necessities amid shock and grief. Others see it as sanitizing a scene. Forensic psychology often notes that in cases of intimate partner violence or suspicious disappearances, the most chilling crimes can unfold in broad daylight or during seemingly normal afternoons. No dramatic fight caught on camera. No obvious red flags at the bar. Just calm competence masking something darker. Brian's Marine Corps tattoo, visible in some footage, speaks to a man with discipline and training, qualities that could help in a crisis or in managing one. The investigation remains active. The US Coast Guard is pursuing leads on a mystery boat anchored near Soulmate that night. Potential witnesses who might have seen or heard something that contradicts the timeline. Surveillance video, bar receipts, phone data, weather reconstructions, and dinghy demonstrations are all under scrutiny. A GoPro or other recordings from the couple could prove pivotal if recovered. Lynette wasn't just a woman in a swimsuit lost at sea. She was a mother who had rebuilt her life, found love again, and embraced adventure on the water. Her social media showed joy, partnership, and resilience. Friends describe her as vibrant and full of life. That life ended in waters shallow enough in places for a person to stand. If only help had been closer. If only the story lined up with the physics of the place. Brian sits back in the United States now, thousands of miles from Elbow Key. He says he will return to aid the search. He expresses heartbreak and hope that Lynette will be found. Yet the hole in his account, the missing hour before departure, the prolonged drift, the left-behind jewelry, the quick departure from the islands, continues to widen under examination. In the world of maritime mysteries, physics doesn't lie. Tides don't have motives. Currents don't cover tracks. The Abaco locals, some of the finest mariners on the planet, read these waters like a book. To many of them, the story doesn't hold. They see a path to safety that was never taken. They see a timeline stretched beyond belief. They see a paradise that turned deadly not because of an unavoidable accident at the helm, but perhaps because of choices made in the dark. As we wait for authorities to piece together the final chapter, one thing is certain. Lynette Hooker deserves better than a narrative built on gaps. Her daughter Carly refuses to let the case fade. The Royal Bahamas Police Force and US investigators continue their work. New witnesses may still come forward. That mystery boat near Soulmate could hold the key. This wasn't just trouble in paradise. It was a dream that vanished, leaving ripples that grow stronger with every passing day. The sun set on Lynette Hooker's final evening, but the search for truth has only just begun. In these shallow but unforgiving waters, secrets have a way of surfacing eventually. What do you think really happened that night? The missing time? The shallow flats? The items left behind on Soulmate? The calm demeanor at the bar followed by tragedy? Drop your thoughts below. Every comment helps push this story further and keeps pressure on for answers. If new evidence drops, you won't want to miss it. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and join us as we follow every lead, every contradiction, and every piece of data until the full picture emerges. Lynette's voice may have been silenced by the sea, but her story will not be. We follow the facts. We honor the missing. And we don't stop until the tide brings the truth home.